but we'll restart the recording. Oh, there's Sam. We're looking at Sam.
And I think Rosa was planning on being here, but I don't see her yet.
Yeah,
either.
you know, she messaged me yesterday, so I mean, it's just, you know.
She sent me a message about where to find the zoning stuff. So I wasn't exactly sure what she was looking for. So I just sent her the link to where all the definitions are about the that part of zoning, residential, non-residential. So it's got headings. So hopefully that will help her find what she was looking for.
Hopefully. Okay. And we'll still be done at 5 because council, we have a central Clemson work group tonight.
Okay. And we have planning commission at 6.
Woo!
Yeah, this is Longleaf is coming up on this one the first time as a PD, if the new type of PD passes. That should be interesting.
$425,000 homes and still no.
I have some comments related to that for tonight. I'll save them for the public times.
Oh, that's my comment. I did find out, and I think I sent it. Did I send you the piece from the Washington Post today? I'll send it to everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But I haven't read it.
Well, there's a piece in the Washington Post. There's a bill that's part of one of the president's infrastructure plans that is actually really interesting to help first generation homeowners build equity. And it's something along the lines that we've sort of discussed. I have a feeling that Cory Booker and a couple other people had a hand in this who have been talking about these programs. I will send it to everybody. I did learn that it's not been passed because it is part of the infrastructure bill. But take a look at it. There are some interesting lessons there for us to go from. Okay, it is 4 after, and obviously you guys all know I'm an impatient person. So we'll start this today. I'm going to, I don't know if everybody met Shannon. I think you introduced yourself. Sorry, lose track. Shannon Quattlebaum, when we started Next, obviously we knew that none of us could manage this large octopus of an endeavor. And so Bob Brookover, who most of you know, has been chairing the Next committee. They put out a call for, I believe your title is program manager or project manager. And so I'm gonna let Shannon introduce herself, but she is the one who has to wrangle the octopus. And so I'm gonna let her introduce herself, and then she's gonna give us an update because her job is to provide that 30,000 foot or higher view of what everybody's doing and to help keep us on track. So I hope you all feel sorry for her for that job and appreciate the task that she's taken on, if you know any of us. And so with that, Shannon, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey guys, thank you for letting me join your meeting today. I will be at most of your meetings from here on out because as Catherine said, one of my jobs is to help all of these work groups integrate their recommendations together. So making sure everybody knows what other groups are doing that might affect what you're thinking about and what you're doing and how your recommendations might affect other groups as well. So right now, just to give you kind of an overall picture update, the traffic, transportation, and transit group is a little bit, they're our group that's the farthest ahead. And they have already reviewed all their recommendations from the white paper. And what they have chosen to do is they rewrote some of them. Some of them they kept the same, and then they added about 6 of their own that were not in the white paper originally, that came from discussions from the community members in this group. They kind of had a couple of sessions in the beginning where they brainstormed outside of what the white paper had originally set down to think about what other areas they might want to offer recommendations in. So they have finalized their recommendations, and the implementation committee that Bob Brookover is heading is going to review those this week and also help us determine what the process is from there. They're likely going to Planning Commission and then to City Council. Oh, great, Catherine.
There you go.
So this is an example, and on this one, so the top recommendations, there were 5 traffic recommendations from the white paper. And you'll see at the bottom, for those top three, they left those three, and the yellow highlighted area is what they rewritten or added. So for them, so for example, an easy one to take a look at, number one is work with the university and neighboring cities to expand contributions to the CAT bus system. They also want council to look at expanding the CAT bus system, the routes and what it offers as well, not just the funding for it. So they took what came from the white paper and expanded on it.
Sorry, I lost my window.
Okay. So they did that, and then they also added 5 or 6 of their own that were more neighborhood specific.
A quick question. I saw one on there about the communicating with the university about encouraging maybe a limitation on freshmen having cars.
Mhm.
I think Todd has mentioned that there have been discussions with university personnel in the past. I don't know how high up those discussions went or what kind of, influence those people might have had on decision makers. Do we have a plan in place on who is going to be in those kinds of conversations and who they'll be speaking to?
Sure. So there's another work group that is just university relations and relations with other jurisdictions. So that work group is going to be responsible for more of the implementation end of these. They're going to take the ones that are university specific, and we're just going to have that group really working on that communication. So it's not coming from 8 different people. It's going to be more coordinated.
Great, thank you.
So anyway, I know you guys looked at, I think, the first 3 of your recommendations last week. Did y'all have any questions or issues with those 3, or those 3 that you felt comfortable supporting?
So here are the ones we talked about. She says optimistically. I don't know why this is giving me fits today. Okay, there we go. This is what we did yesterday. This is what we did last week.
So you've got under affordable housing. We'll just talk through them real quick and make sure I know where you guys stand on these. So the first one is incorporate affordable and workforce housing into catalyst areas using PDs and public funding where needed. So that's one where we're going to have to work out the final recommendation probably with the land use group, because what they're working on with the catalyst areas is really tied to this. But is that one that you all felt comfortable supporting?
Yeah, and that's why that phrase is added at the end.
Okay.
So this is with the
Right.
change.
Okay.
Right.
All right. The second one was establish a housing trust fund to support affordable housing and accelerate the Community Housing Foundation's work.
Yes.
You guys were in agreement with that one too? Okay. Is there anything you want to add or tweak about either of those to make them either more expansive or narrow them down?
Well, these are with our tweet. So we made it through 1, 2, and 3 last week.
Okay. All right.
And so our goal for today was to make it through 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 of
Okay.
the next.
So the first 3 from last week, you are good to go. You're happy with them the way they're at.
Well, these are with our edits. So these are not.
Those are with your edits. Okay.
I
Okay.
have one,
Somewhere I have
one note on number 3. It was a question, and this may be what you're talking about,
Mhm.
Shannon, that we will hone in on the how and if others after we get through this part. But I had a note about, do we want to add infill to our existing single family neighborhoods? Part of so many things in the comp plan say protection of existing neighborhoods. So I don't know if we want to put that in there now or how we want to deal with that.
I'm going to write that down, and after we finish the other recommendations that come from the white paper, we're going to circle back around to all of these that you
Okay.
think you might want to add, but you're not
Okay.
sure. We'll have a separate discussion on those, if that works for everyone.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so where we were in the next one, then we got to, and this is really an area I'm going to probably let Elaine talk about this, because she has really been championing for the Planning Commission our neighborhood preservation and enhancement. So Elaine, I will edit for you, and if you want to
Okay.
about these.
So the first one is to initiate a neighborhood planning effort with several of Clemson's historically African-American neighborhoods with the intent to prevent displacement and improve quality of life. And I think we might want to expand that. So as we move forward, encouraging all neighborhoods to develop a neighborhood plan. Because we're talking about not just the neighborhood preservation of the minority neighborhoods, but others as well. So, and again, this is probably not where we need to put this in here yet. But Cadillac Heights does have a neighborhood plan that was completed by a university graduate class 2 years ago, and it's just been sitting on the shelf in the Planning and Codes office. So as we move forward on that one, I'd like to encourage starting on that one as a model for other neighborhoods, because if we can get one done, then the other neighborhoods might be more in favor of doing something like that in their neighborhood as well.
Elaine, is that model like for language changes to bring to the city, or what kind of, or do we know what is in that? Like zoning ordinance proposal changes, or?
This would not be, I don't think, because there is language in the comprehensive plan about neighborhood plans and a neighborhood council and things that are citywide. So
okay.
I think when we narrow in on that, we might want to think about how that could be done in multiple places. Okay. Any thoughts about that one? Do we need to expand, tweak it, change it, delete it?
Can I just say that I think this sounds very weak the way it is stated. It seems to me, and maybe there's someplace else that this gets said, but it seems to me that there are neighborhoods that need to be rezoned or put into catalyst areas in order to get this done, and to simply have groups sitting around talking about it. I think they need protection, 25 years ago. And so this strikes me as weak. I wish we could strengthen it to saying something like, we need to consider rezoning areas. I'm disappointed with ClemsonNext in that we've only got one little map that is a footnote dealing with one of these neighborhoods. They didn't make themselves they didn't make their way into the catalyst neighborhoods. And I think they should have in some way. Anyway, I'm not sure what the best way to handle this is, but this statement strikes me as weak and belated.
So maybe, Bill, it needs to be another one added to it, which Shannon was talking about. We can add additional points, and maybe we add that one specifically focusing on what you're talking about. I can't hear you, Bill. You're muted.
I'd be happy to add another point, and how to word the thing is plan to rezone the neighborhoods or put them into catalyst areas that ensure their protection.
Yeah, I'm with Bill on this, and I think Chad's email kind of reiterates the same point, is being a little bit more forceful and quicker to action. I mean, I know we're reacting at this point, but trying to get ahead of things as much as we can now that we're here actually writing it would benefit us quicker.
Does this sentence work? I mean, protect them from redevelopment. I know we're talking about, I mean, I hate to reuse the word gentrification, but to ensure their protection from redevelopment. Is that enough?
Yeah, we're specifically talking about the neighborhoods that are not zone R12, R20. So we have 5, I think, minority neighborhoods that are RM2 and 3. except
Right.
for Vista Circle, I think is R12.
Vista Circle is R12. I think all the other ones are in the RM, and I can't remember the number.
I don't think
but-
any of them are RM1, Bill, and I don't think they're 3. I think they're 4. I think they're 2 and 3.
I think you're right about that. I'd have to check a map.
Well, I'm happy with adding that one to it, so we can focus specifically on that and not try to fold it into something or miss something by focusing that first one on the rezoning and leaving out the neighborhood plans and their role in this.
You might want to consider just taking that first one and breaking it out into 3 separate ones. So you have your zoning. You could make a separate one specifically about neighborhood planning efforts. And if you're concerned about the strength, I mean, you could require neighborhood planning efforts. You could change that word initiate.
Develop even.
Something else, or develop a neighborhood planning effort or neighborhood planning process with, you could talk later, we could circle back around and talk about accountability for that process.
And we have to be careful, I think, that this is not, that we're not going in to develop the neighborhood plan for them. It needs to be something that is done with neighborhood input. And that, if you look at the Cadillac Heights plan, that was the case. The students met with residents and did surveys, and they did it all based on what the input they got from the residents. So I don't want to put something in there that sounds like me over here in my single family neighborhoods telling people in this other neighborhood how they need to do things.
But you could write, develop and implement a grassroots.
Yeah, I'm good with that one.
Process and make it available to all neighborhoods in the city to use at their
Exactly.
discretion.
We're still on number 1 because I see where number 2 was moved to with the intent to prevent displacement.
Well, that's not, well, I had just moved down.
Oh yeah, I was just saying, but the thing, well, whenever you get to number 2,
Okay.
then I'll say something.
Yeah.
And Elaine,
Okay, I'm happy with what you put on number 1 now.
okay, this gets at what you're working so hard at. Okay, Rosa. Number 2.
Okay, because you all had it with number 1, but I think the language need to be stronger because what you got with the intent can change to anything. I can intend to go down Highway 76, but take 123. So the intent to prevent displacement, can we not change something that make it more solid?
Oh, yeah. Well, it needs to be a complete sentence anyway. So is it that we're going to work, we're going to work with rezoning? Is this, are we talking about zoning and overlay district? I mean, I'm trying to, this gets to Bill's very first point. This is a broad.
Yeah.
What if we talk about developing, and this is a very broad and ambiguous word, but a toolkit to prevent displacement and improve quality of life, a toolkit for neighborhoods to help prevent displacement and improve quality for life. And then maybe that's something we can put all of these ideas into: the zoning, the planning.
Well, and that gets at the discussion somewhat, Rosa. Don't you think that the Shaw Center's been having that this could be this could have a legal aspect to the toolkit, this could have a financial aspect?
Right. Definitely can. What would be the toolkit?
Well, it might be on the website, for example, something as simple as the neighborhood toolkit, where you could click and find who is our attorney of record that maybe will give you advice on stuff. The toolkit might offer, I don't know, we'd have to figure that out of what would go in that toolkit.
So here's my concern when I hear this. A
Yeah.
toolkit to prevent these things happening. We should be preventing those things happening so people don't need a toolkit. So the thought is there, but I think we need to take it a step further, and we are the toolkit and we need to, maybe look down at the plan to rezone existing neighborhoods or place into catalyst areas as step one, so that toolkit is less needed. I don't think that we should be doing anything that's going to lead to a resident thinking that they need to go find a resource to protect their home. Like, we should make sure that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And we would do that through zoning recommendations.
I think so.
And maybe,
Okay.
and maybe this is where the overlay would come into place that we've talked about. We put something on top of whatever the zoning is that further
Yes,
prevents displacement and improves quality of life.
we could layer that to get that security there.
Can we move to prevent displacement and improve quality of life to the beginning of 3? Does that make sense?
In
Oh, I see
order
what you're
to,
saying.
Mhm. And I would just say, yeah,
And then delete 2.
Too, yeah.
Now,
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I sort of agree with where Lillian and Rosa were headed. Maybe we need to add one that, because we've talked about this, and this is the overlap maybe with the Shaw Center to, and I agree with what Lillian's saying. I'm just trying to find the right verb, that we should have legal and financial assistance available to residents to prevent displacement and improve. I mean, I don't know. Do we want to do that? We've talked a lot about it, or does that really just fall under the Shaw Center and their responsibilities?
Well, that's the intent of the Shaw Center, is to have those resources available.
Right.
is the Shaw Center a city, like functioning under the umbrella of the city?
No,
Or yeah, so,
it's a nonprofit.
right. So I would say that apples and oranges. I mean, it's not, but this is separate from that completely. And we don't want to assume, yes, they're going to have resources for those kinds of things, but we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to prevent people needing to go to those resources.
Okay.
But also too, let's think now. When we're talking about the toolkit and all that, I don't want to sound condescending. Too many of us we're not gonna look on the, I get an echo. Okay. We're not gonna look on the web to see that we need to see, can we get legal help? I'm telling you the reality. Now, there will be a few, but not a lot. Because even when we went through the neighborhoods the other day, about 6 houses, we was asking them about wills. And they was truly afraid. And I understand the fear. And I understand the fear more so, and that's the reason I said now, this is why you need a will, because you don't know when you're finna croak. I mean, so, it's a lot to think about with the verbiage, because the verbiage need to be solid, because we want to prevent displacement, improve quality of life. All of these things are good. Now, I agree with the plan to rezone existing places, but we have to get the people in the neighborhoods to want to improve quality of life. Do I sound awful?
No,
No,
I get what you're saying. And the reason I said the thing about the Shaw Center is the intent is for the Shaw Center to be able to find attorneys who are willing to provide, some pro bono 5 hours or 3 hours or whatever, pro bono work monthly. And then if we have 5 or 6 doing that, then we won't tax them all to death. They'll can rotate around and take turns doing it. And I think that's what, with the neighborhoods we're talking about, they don't they don't have $500 or $1,000 to pay to an attorney to create a will or to help them figure out about the heirs property and tease apart who actually owns the property and that kind of stuff.
So I'm new to your conversations, but I have a question. We have number 4, that's hire a community development director to strengthen partnerships between neighborhood planning processes and plan implementation. Could we add something there that also says, besides hiring them, you're going to dedicate funds for that person to have a fund to provide legal and financial assistance when needed, or a process to identify that?
Yeah,
And
and I
maybe
think,
that puts it under the city's control and not an outside nonprofit. And assuming you want to endorse that recommendation, I'm assuming that person's job would be to be doing some of this outreach.
and when we all first started meeting, I think we also discussed how just education, kind of like what Rose was talking about. She's literally out there going door to door, telling people, getting the conversations going. We can be doing that too. Or, you know, whoever is hired can have people volunteering, they can do it themselves. But I think that's part of a responsibility we've got as well, is we're sitting here on this Zoom, like she said, $5 says a citizen in the city is not pulling up this recording to watch it after the fact. And so they're not going to know what's going on. We've got to make sure that we're spreading this information grassroots, like we're talking about other initiatives. But we can do that. And I think that we have a responsibility to.
Okay, so
I'm good with putting that in there and also letting the Shaw Center do what they're able to as well, or those two can work together.
I agree, because if we bump heads, what's going to happen? They're going to be totally confused.
Mm-hmm.
okay,
And
so-
then where the Shaw Center might need to be blamed for something, and it's really the city. Now, it just, in my thoughts and what I do know, I do believe that the city needs to step up in any kind of way that they can, because the city has really let a lot of things go. Because I used to work with Arlene Young with the community. Okay, and yeah, we went toe to toe, but she began to see what I was trying to say. But if the city step up to a lot of things to enhance the community, but first you got to have a buy-in to the people.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is good, but I don't want to feed them. I need to show them how to fish too.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that the Shaw Center and this project here need to collaborate.
Yeah,
So we can all be
I
on
agree.
the same page. Because when I retire, this is what I'm going to be out doing next month.
Are you retiring next month?
I'm going to do something. I'm finna surprise everybody.
Good for you. So I'm good with adding that statement about the funds to that position, that they have, that if we're going to have a person that's their responsibility, then we got to make sure they have the funding they need to make that happen.
Sorry, I was doing my other job for a second.
So will this person that you are talking about, what kind of description will it be? Will it be a person that needs to get to know the community and not just walk in?
Yeah, it needs to be citywide too, Rosa. I mean, I think when part of
okay.
this we're looking at, we need to make sure we have I'm sorry, I got distracted. Somebody just pulled in my driveway. I need to be upstairs hiding. We just need to make sure we have the responsibilities spelled out correctly and the funds for them to do their job.
And I think that would be the next phase for you guys. So after these are adopted by council, then you can come back and maybe then you work on this position description for this.
Okay. And do you think we skipped over number 3? Shannon, do you think we need to clarify that at this point, or is that something we'll do when we go back through it the second time?
What are key capital projects?
Yeah.
Well, that's like if they needed water lines replaced or
Okay.
any kind of infrastructure like that, or is what I'm thinking.
Shouldn't that be defined?
Well, it's going to be identified through the whatever. If you go back and look at that neighborhood plan
Okay.
for Cadillac Heights and see what the recommendations are in there and see what you think. If that neighborhood followed that plan, this is what we can all do to kind of give us a feel for how we need to word this. Look at what was proposed for Cadillac Heights. Are there any projects that are identified in that neighborhood plan that's going to require city funding? And it might be water replacement, it might be sidewalks, it might be, well, streetlights. They've already put streetlights in several places. That was a fairly simple fix, but it may be something that's going to be a little more costly than that.
So another question, do we have a process in place? Does the city have a process in place for a neighborhood to request that? I know there's a sidewalk request process, but does something on here need to be develop a process for neighborhoods to request investment in infrastructure?
Yeah, we need to look at that a little bit closer. The sidewalk thing is a sore spot, especially for me, because what we've done for many, many years is we've budgeted $60,000 a year for sidewalks. You can do about 3 squares of a sidewalk. No, not quite that, but you could do more than that. But you know what I'm saying? That's not nearly just what needs to be done in east of College. And that's a very dangerous place for people to walk along Riggs and Strode. And it's millions of dollars.
It's one of the things I've learned. I had no idea when I was running for office. I said something in my first statement about sidewalks, and Robert called me and said, "Let me tell you how much sidewalks cost."
Yeah. Yeah.
It is one of those things and part of me is like, really, it costs that much. That's why almost I would be happy if there was even like an extra, I don't even care if it's paved at this point. I'd settle for a dirt path along some of our roads. The old Andy Griffith way, but yeah, no, I don't know, but that's a good question. And are we happy now with kind of 1, 2, 3, and 4?
We might need to tweak 3, but we can do that when we come back to it, because I think if everybody I haven't looked at in a while, we'll spend a little bit of time looking at the Cadillac Heights thing, then we'll get a little bit better feel. Infrastructure might not be an encompassing enough word, because it might be more than just the basic infrastructure like we're talking about, but I think we can figure that out.
Okay, then onward.
So I'm going to jump in right here. This next category, there's 3 or 4 items related to student housing. So I think land use and development is working on these. A lot of these are going to run through that university relationships group. So I think for items 1, 2, and 3, if you guys want to say, yes, we're in favor of this, and we will figure out which group is going to come through and have you guys work together with them as they get there, as the land use group and the university group get to this point. I think that would probably be enough for those.
Well, I have a question about number 2. I'm good with number 1, that we get the university to think more about it, because right now their plans are to add 450 beds or something is about it in the next 6 years or whatever.
I didn't even know it was that many.
It was in, where did we see it, Shannon? It's in that housing report that the numbers that we got from Todd. That one was in there. But I'm concerned about the cultivate student housing development in specific catalyst areas. Okay. Now, first of all, we need a realistic count, and I don't know how much we're going to end up deciding that we really do need in terms of that. Like I have a problem, and I'll just throw it right out there right now with Catalyst Area 1, which is growth at the seams, which is down 93 from the Episcopal Church to the Esso Club. Number one, I don't think it's realistic that'll ever happen, because I just don't see you getting Tiger Park when you've got how many people each paid $25,000 or $30,000 for their parking spot, and I don't see that changing. Several of those are mixed use with some businesses or university offices and some residential thing in a couple of those buildings. I don't see the Baptist Student Union going anywhere. I know they would really like to stay close to campus, which is why Catholic Church is doing all they're doing in my neighborhood, is because they didn't want to be away from campus. So we see all those things going. And Todd's response to that Catalyst area, when he presented something, was that we recommend 6-story buildings with rooftop amenities. I wouldn't want to be in Bill Arna's house with something like that happening, where that fraternity type house is right now. That's a narrow strip of land. The opposite side of the street belongs to the university. Nothing's going to happen on that. So do we really think it's realistic to recommend that as a place for high density student housing?
I think it's a horrible idea.
Can I chime in? I think that's the strip number one. Not much is probably going to happen there, but I do worry about 6 stories coming over there, only about 100 feet away. My problem with cultivate student housing development in specific catalyst areas, I wouldn't do that at all until the university is chained into building its own student housing. So I'm against that altogether. The other thing that hits me is that wherever you build this, you're not solving the transportation problem, which has already been built into the area. And, there's part of me that would rather see the things built out in the countryside with adequate transportation than to have it built into town. I would rather have places set aside for affordable housing and for faculty housing and for professional housing. This notion that the city somehow owes the university space for students bugs me. All right, I'll be quiet.
So the land use and development group right now is working through recommendations for each catalyst area. And as they get to that point, there are going to be public meetings for the communities about each catalyst area, where the public can come and give input on the uses described for those catalyst areas. So if you want to strike this one, if you want to take out this recommendation, you can do that, because it is also being considered by another group. Thoughts?
I hate it.
I guess what I would say is my number, instead of that is number 2, it would be what we sort of, was it just last week that we talked about this, of the report on even getting an annual census on the number of beds and available beds, because based on what I think, Shannon, you shared it, was it your report that, I mean, there's like 8, I mean, we have a surplus of beds already. So before we cultivate anything, we need to even know.
I agree. We need a good handle on it.
Right. And I'm going to work with some other folks and see if we can verify the numbers that we looked at last week. So we can kind of table that.
Okay, why don't we do that? Instead of striking it, why don't we just table it for us?
Okay, we can do that.
I'd rather strike it, but there we are.
I would rather like knock it out, period, forever and ever, but yeah, I'm with you on that.
But if something's gonna go in any of these places, I would want this committee, this work group, to have some input into it. It's the only reason I would say just table it for now. But I
I-
agree. I don't want to see that happen, but there may be one or two of those catalyst areas that would be, I won't say reasonable, but a little more reasonable than others. Like I just mentioned, that one growth at the seams, I think that's totally unrealistic to think about 6-story student housing units down that road.
Like I said to you, Elaine, all I can think of is the Grand Strand on Myrtle Beach, just hotel after hotel after hotel. I mean, it's just the image.
That are sky high now. Yeah.
But I would say in here, I guess as part of this somewhere, we need to add about having access. We need to develop a database, develop access to actual information about student and non-student housing.
Right.
Is that something that Todd's department, I mean, I know that they've got all this data that is available to them that they're presenting to us when we ask for things. So can we request that some sort of reporting along that lines is added to their standards that they gather every year?
So they did send numbers, and I can share them with the rest of the committee. I shared them with Catherine and Elaine of what they have to date.
So they're getting these numbers that we're talking about.
They do keep track of these numbers and update them a couple of times a year.
Okay.
My question on that is and maybe it's new, that's the question, Shannon, because a couple of years ago when we were going down this path and I was just an obnoxious person speaking at city council, we asked this question about availability and we kept hearing that you couldn't get an accurate count, And then they would toss out the numbers that it was 80% at capacity, that it was 100% at capacity. So yeah, that's up for discussion tonight at the Clemson Central Work Group, as a matter of fact, talking about some, if we can get a census of some housing. So
I think that if that's something you all feel strongly about, you should add it as a recommendation to this section. Develop a database and provide access to numbers on student and non-student housing.
And I would assume that the information they're pulling now is only for City of Clemson, or are they actually working with Central as well?
They
And
also
Seneca.
talk with the administrators from Central and Pendleton and Seneca.
Okay, good.
Yes, so they do have those conversations and capture those numbers the best they can. But it might be worthwhile to make this a regional census instead of just
because it definitely impacts Central and Pendleton and Seneca.
And it's not just Pickens County, you know, it's that part of Anderson and
Right.
Oconee as well.
Right.
Can I press this a little bit? Instead of annual, could you say quarterly?
can we compromise it semi-annual?
Well,
Why quarterly?
well, I'm trying to press against my experience with this is that the responses have always been so nebulous that I want responses. You know, I'd be happier if every time the planning commission met, the first thing that happened in this town is that there was a census on student housing in the region. That's how the meeting ought to start.
I see what you're saying, Bill, but with student housing, I think at some point in mid-spring semester and mid-fall semester are going to give you the best numbers, because if you look at it in the summer, for example, it's not going to look the same.
Well, the leases are signed, you know, in July. So you're going to know, just because people aren't present doesn't mean that they don't have a number for what's about to happen. So I understand the quarterly request. I don't think that I think you're going to get good numbers no matter when you ask, because they're going to know if somebody's going to be there or not. They have last minute rentals. They have short-term rentals that are by the semester as well. So the quarterly could help with that. But I don't think that, you know, just because people are gone over the summer doesn't mean that the numbers change. They're still going to know who all's coming in the fall.
Can I respond by suggesting another couple of words? Develop and implement an accurate database.
We can try. There is no guarantee, Bill, that it's going to be accurate. Because here's the deal that we've always run up against, even when I try to do it, is that the people who answer the phone at these places are
They're students.
questionable at best.
Yeah, I mean, there's students who are working in those offices as well.
So it will take a bit to develop the database, and I can only hope that it will be accurate.
Thank you.
I guess that's better than developing an inaccurate database. But yeah, we can, and maybe, you know, that's the other thing with quarterly. I don't know, maybe if people get in the mode that, you know, oh, look, the city of Clemson is going to be calling, it's the 1st of May and we need to give them summer numbers.
Can we say, can we add the word planned occupancy?
Yeah, there we go. Good. I was trying to figure out how to say that. Thank you. What's up, Chad? Said Chad just joined.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. We're wordsmithing. Okay, so then number 4.
So this one I'm going to ask you all to table too, because this is one to work on with the land use group.
Okay. And I think this is where I think that's where we run into something that Elaine, I don't know if it's on PC or on our desk, about this whole thing about changing the commercial zone to not even
Yeah,
the mixed use.
the pending ordinance thing. Yeah, I'm trying to think if that's on our agenda for tonight.
So that is, guys, you know, we've all made fun of the mixed use stuff around town. At least I have plenty. And this would kind of not even make them do that, that if you wanted to build the commercial use would be commercial use and residential use would be residential use, if I kind of say that very simply.
It actually does away with mixed use as a conditional use. That what it will do is you can follow the guidelines or zoning for whatever, and commercial would go in the C, the CM and CP 1, 2, and 3 districts. But not would the developer automatically be able to meet a couple of conditions and stick, you know, 5 stories or 4 stories of student housing above, because which is what happened. That's exactly what happened at Dockside. That was a residential district added to a residential housing added to a non-residential district. And this would, in the city, if they meet those conditions, and that's just the planning staff checking boxes, then they do it. And that's exactly what's happening right now. But if you put it in the form of a planned development, it doesn't preclude the developers from having housing in a project like that. But what it does do, it puts a lot more regulation on it through the planning and codes office, planning commission, and city council.
So yeah, it's an effort. So that's one of the things that we'll table, as Shannon said, with the land use group. And I'm glad we didn't vote on it in council, because I didn't understand it, honestly, the way it was written. I was confused. Okay, number 5, continue to utilize and strengthen the rental housing program as a tool for mitigating the encroachment of student rentals into single family neighborhoods.
So I have a question. We've talked a lot about overlays, and I like to think I have a good understanding, but I might not. Is it possible that overlays can help with this in conjunction with strengthening the language in that program? Because I'm thinking about, and I've told Chad about this, my neighborhood where I live, we are very lucky. We are in a completely rented road, but none of us are students. We are all grad students, young families, me, you know, it's great. It could be all frat boys, just the way the language is written. Mm-hmm. So in a perfect world, would there be a possibility to put an overlay into certain areas where there are rentals to make them, like we've talked about, no longer a by the bedroom rental, but a by the unit, by the single family rental.
I love that idea.
And that could also help with Bill's concern about people that are people like me want to also be able to rent. We need to have apartment availability, townhome rental availability for people who aren't students as well, not just by the bedroom rentals. So that was something that came up in my mind when I was reading the emails last week is maybe we combine, strengthen the rental language, that'll help everybody, but even look at overlays that could benefit areas that are already rentals.
So for the most part, the rental housing program encompasses single-family homes that are in the R12 and R20 district. And that's like, there are multiple houses around me that are in the rental housing program, and they don't rent by the bedroom with those. They're they're limited to no more than 2 unrelated persons.
Right.
Now, when that can get a little sticky is, and I believe there was a house over in Monaco that had a significant number of aunts and uncles and cousins, so they're all related. So they had like 12 individuals living. I don't know what the number was actually, but don't quote me on that. But they had more individuals than you would anticipate.
Right.
But to me, we can strengthen some of that by, well, number one, we've got a grandfathered program that I question. I just think we need to investigate further. How do we allow things to be grandfathered permanently?
Yeah, we've had that come up in the zoning appeals as well.
Right. So there's a couple of neighborhoods across the street in College that allow 5 unrelated as being grandfathered in. I don't struggle quite as much if you grandfather in somebody at 3, but it gets a little ridiculous when you can have 5 unrelated in the house living next door to me and my family. So I think that's what I'd have to double check to see if there's any other things that are encompassed in that program that might be like.
Yeah, and I'll admit, I think you can tell I haven't read the language, so that probably would help if I did that first. Does that rental housing program require all the inspections and everything like the other rentals do? Okay.
They have to have,
I know the short-term rental one does, so I assume they're similar.
Right. Okay. But I don't know. Here's a concern I have with this when it talks about strengthening and mitigating the encroachment of student rentals. That would be adding another student rental to the mix, and I don't see much of that happening in the R12, R20 neighborhoods anymore. Because if these people are paying, the houses around me, the one across the street was $400,000. The one right around the corner was a bidding war, and they were asking $379. The one I told you about, Lily, and they got $412 for it. Down the street, there's another one that went for $6 something, and another one that went for $4 something.
Part of me hears that, but then part of me knows that there are people with money who will do it to make money. So,
but you can't rent it for enough to make money. That's my whole point. You can't rent it to 2 people, and if they join the rental housing program now, having not been in it before, not grandfathered in, they can only have 2 unrelated.
Okay.
So that's a bit of protection for what we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I made a note to table this to get data on the rental housing program. Let's make sure that we understand it, because I am not aware of all the twists and turns in it, I'll be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, but Elaine, you made me feel better with some of those answers already, so thank you.
I know enough to be dangerous, Lillian.
There's every woman in the universe.
I'm trying to catch up.
I think Chad wanted to say something, and I know he's got grandfathered in property on east of College.
We don't, not on College, but we have some in another part of town. But
no, east of College, yeah.
I am very familiar with the rental property licensing as a landlord, as somebody who goes through it. And the one thing I would say is it's more than just downtown at this point as well. I think the original intention, as I understood it, was protecting single family neighborhoods, and you don't have a big frat house with 10 people living in a house. And I think it has done that. And one of the important implications I think that to understand is just economics of it that, like, for example, I rent to families on my single family houses, and there's one in particular, it's a 3-bedroom house. And even with a grandfather, I could rent to 3 students, but I rent to just a family who pays $1,300 a month. And those students, maybe you can get, if you had a 2-student person in there, you might be able to get $700 a person, or $1,400. But it's that there's more wear and tear on a house when you have them turning over and stuff like that anyway. So the economics of it, the rental licensing is the most important tool, I think, to make single family neighborhoods to have more of a family or non-student user program. I think behind the scenes though, it's a complicated program that I don't think is always is fairly applied. Like, for example, single family houses have it, duplexes have it, a bunch of other units don't have it, and the rates are kind of all over the place. So it's just I think it's a little bit of a mess in some ways, just how it's applied. Like the 400 student complex downtown doesn't have a rental license requirement. Family landlord has it, and I don't know. I think that's is a percentage of the rent I pay to have this license I'm kind of paying for them to enforce rental licensing around town. So it has some room for improvement.
Interesting. I didn't know that was how that worked, Chad.
Yeah.
I wish we had more landlords and rental property owners like you, Chad. I know you're responsible, and I see that over and over again. There's some others that have property in this neighborhood, my neighborhood in particular, that are not responsible about it.
I remember when we lived on Strode back in the dark ages, the early 2000s. Yeah, it was the same thing. I mean, that's how we got the rental program of one of the houses next to me on Strode was how we got the not more than whatever it is, 2 people unrelated. Okay, so then let's make sure we get that. And I think that Chad and Lillian, I think with some help from you guys, we can either decide to leave this. I'm gonna pick up on what Lillian said, that utilize and strengthen, and I'm not sure what strengthen would be. So that's a little vague, as Lillian has said, keeping us on task. Let's figure out if there's anything we want to do with that. And last
or
but
even
certainly
just
not least,
clearer
the
language.
PD process. Again, this is something that I've learned a lot about, that in a planned development, that I don't want to live it, but other people do. That's where the city has a little more say in what happens. So anything else that anybody wants to talk about in terms of using this development process and homeowners associations?
So one of the things that I don't know if this is the appropriate place to put it, but it's part of the comp plan, and one of the strategies is to bubble up a neighborhood, a council of neighborhoods, so that we have more representation across town. So some neighborhoods don't have an HOA. We have a neighborhood association. It's not an HOA, and it's very loose, and we really need to tighten it up a little bit. But we need to provide assistance to other neighborhoods to do that. As part of that, and I'm just going to toss this idea out, and we can go back to it later or whatever. But when I look at the map of Clemson and all of the neighborhoods, and some of them are, and I've got 2 different maps. I've got the one from next door, and then there's one that Todd had. I would like for us to consider possibly recommending that we look at a way to create districts, and we could actually do it based on population, to make sure that a district with 50 people in it wasn't the same thing as a district with 300 people in it. So, I mean, neighborhoods can have large to small amounts, but if we create a district that kind of balance it out, down the road, I'd like to see the city consider going to maybe expanding the size of city council and having a representative from each district on city council, so that right now, I don't think it's not backfiring on anybody, but 3 of the members on city council right now live in my downtown neighborhood. Well, mine and the one across college. So 3 out of the 7 people on city council are from one small area within the city. So how is that representing some of these other neighborhoods? And there are some, and it's legal in South Carolina to have districts where you have a council representative from a particular district. But that would be one of the goals in that, to me, would be we can figure out then how to ensure that our minority neighborhoods have in representation on city council instead of just depending on somebody to take up the calls for them.
Well, the other thing, and I'm not opposed to that, by the way, is, and this could just happen sooner, is, you know, we've talked about, and we have I have permission from Andy, and we can talk about to create a neighborhood subcommittee, a neighborhood, whatever we want to call it, blue ribbon, whatever we want to call it. We have a way to do that, because I have been a fan of sort of creating some of these ways for people, as many ways as we can for people to have a voice. And so I mean, we can do this. We can create whatever we want to do here. So that's
That could be a way to ease into what Elaine's talking about.
exactly. So if people start getting involved and we really start to see some different advocacy issues by neighborhood, we can do that. My only concern in terms of council seats is I know that like Little Delwood, I mean, we wouldn't probably qualify for our own council person, but so where would we all be included? Are we going to include the Downs separate from
Well, that's when you draw
Berkeley? So
lines.
it does
That's
get a
when you draw district
little
lines.
messy.
That's when you draw
Um,
district lines.
But we can do that. So, but there are
Yeah.
that's why we could do this middle step of opening it up. And I think,
Yeah.
Elaine, you had said that early on, asking people from a neighborhood to nominate their person.
Well, to
Yeah.
at least identify them, but then you got, that was from next door, and here's the deal with next door. Whoever is the lead for that neighborhood and sets it up, they can draw their own lines.
Yeah, I think
We
next
won't-
door is just a nice little social media tool to spread information. I don't think
Yeah.
that maps on there really hold much weight.
I'm agreeing with everything that's being said, but I'm a little bit confused. Are we talking about number 1 in priority catalyst areas?
It started there, but we kind of,
Okay. It seems to me the meat of that isn't quite what we're talking about. The idea is to do something to target new housing options to non-students where desired.
No, my intent, Bill, was to add another point.
Okay, and I'm
That-
happy.
not this- I didn't see them as the same thing. Mine is adding a thing to ensure we have neighborhood representation all over town.
I agree with that. It's just that I got, when I'm looking at what we started with, I also agree with we ought to do whatever we can to have housing options for non-students, since we seem to be spending a lot on providing housing for students.
And perhaps that's another point under this one as well. Okay, Shannon has gone, and I think we're about a few minutes after 5. So
I'll tell you what I will do. I've got the notes from this. I will send this out as annotated. And I will sort of add at the end here where our questions were, especially as we sort of all got bogged down a little bit into this one. And I will send that out by the time council meets. So give me an hour. And you guys, sorry, I'm just trying to get my day. And so as you think of things, let us know, message us, talk to everybody. And then we'll have more questions and we will finalize this by next week.
exactly. So that's when Shannon was talking about, we start getting down to the how and what specifics next week. So if we can get your updated version with notes, take a look at it and be ready by next week to go to the next level with it. And I believe Shannon will be back to kind of ride herd on us too.
Yeah, her job, and Elaine had to help me with this, her job is to make sure that we do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, she's not telling us what we need to do. She just wants to make sure we do what we're supposed to and we keep moving, because I don't think this committee wasted any time in any of the previous meetings that we had, because we laid some groundwork. We got a little better understanding of zoning and kind of figured some things out. And now we have a better idea of how we're going to go about what we want to do.
Yeah, we needed to learn about zoning and some other
Yeah.
things. So,
Yeah.
okay, guys, I will send this to you probably in an hour. I might send it to you during our work group. Who knows?
Okay.
Anyway, thank you very, very much. And if you guys need anything, please let me know.
We'll see you next. Oh, are we good? Is everybody good with Monday at 4? Okay. Well, we'll plan on staying with that right now.